Hello, Gaston County again. We just had a little technological snafu there, but Naomi's got it under control. Welcome to episode number 78 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting, I think, some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and we are coming to you once again from the international headquarters of GSM Services right here in downtown Gastonia as we continue having some great discussions in the coming weeks and months. We simply believe in discussing more of the reasons why Gaston's great. We have another great organization this week as we highlight the Arc of Gaston County. That is the correct name, right? Arc of Gaston County? All right. We have Sara Osborne, Tracy Buzzeo, and Jennifer Hamrick with us today. Sara is the executive director. Tracy is a board member, and Jennifer is the current president of the board. So Sara, Tracy, and Jennifer, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
All right. As usual, we're going to get right to the questions. So maybe start with you, Jennifer, since you're the furthest away. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, anything that you would like to share.
Well, my career has been in special education. I'm in my 26th year, and I have found a home at the Arc of Gaston County where we can extend beyond my classrooms and my support services across schools out back into the community where I know our students will spend the majority of their lives accessing resources. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks.
Okay, very good. Sara, what would you like to share, ma'am?
Oh, let's see here. I will celebrate my 18th year with the ARC in April. Hard to believe. And the fact that my husband and I have a son with Down syndrome is kind of the driving force that I can bring to the ARC and bring to our community, identifying with other parents, families, a variety of folks in the community that, help them going in the right direction with the ARC. Been married for 24 years, college sweetheart, 3 kids, 2 in college. It's a different kind of busy, but I appreciate you having us here today.
Absolutely. Tracy?
My background is in criminal prosecution. I was a domestic violence prosecuting attorney, and our second child was born with Down syndrome, which is how I met Sara, and she tapped me into the organization. And I'm really proud of what we have in Gaston County and the ARC.
Well, very good. So again, I appreciate that. On the listener, just like to hear a little bit of background on our guest as we go along. So obviously the big question is, and I'll maybe stick with you, Sara, to start with, but these questions are really for all three of you. So feel free to just talk over top of each other. That's how we do it here.
That's how we do it normally.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gaston, great. So Sara, what is, for our listeners who may not be familiar with the organization, what is the Arc of Gaston County, and kind of what is the mission in general? Just kind of share what you can there.
Sure. A little bit of background about the ARC. It was actually started in 1950 in Minnesota by parents and medical professionals who saw potential in people with developmental disabilities. At the time, it was the term of mental retardation was used. And so when the ARC was originally created, it was the Association for Retarded Children. As it evolved and folks realized it wasn't just children, it was adults and it was all ages. The C became the citizens. Then it became the ARC. And then in 1992, it became the ARC. So it became a brand of who we of what we do versus who it is necessarily that we support. So when it's the ARC, and folks ask me what it stands for, I pretty much say we stand to support people with developmental disabilities because the acronym, it's not there anymore.
Sure.
So our chapter started in 1961. There are over 600 chapters throughout the nation. And first and foremost, we are advocacy and awareness for children and adults of all ages with developmental disabilities. And for folks who don't understand necessarily who that involves, folks with Down syndrome, people who have autism, a variety of cognitive delays, what I a lot of the times will use as examples of so they can relate is a lot of people are familiar with Special Olympics. So Special Olympic athletes have developmental disabilities. And when we talk about that, it's what does he need, what do they need, and how can we get them going in the right direction? So as a parent, when folks call, whether they're caregivers or educators, we work a lot with our local law enforcement to give them education. It's what do you need and how can we help you get it? So we might not offer necessarily we are the community resource. We don't offer the program, but we can get you going in the right direction
Gotcha.
with what you need. As a parent, I can identify with the challenges and the celebrations. So I don't tell people we know what they're going through, but when I share with them about my 21-year-old Danny, you can take 10 steps forward in that conversation and already get to the meat of it, of you get it. You didn't just get trained on it kind of thing. So with our chapter, community resource, but we do have specialized programs. We actually have a specialized summer enrichment camp for school-age individuals. We have a Christmas program for adults with disabilities, and we bring disability awareness to pretty much whoever, whenever, however, to the community.
Okay. So you just summarized a lot right there to unpack. So maybe Jennifer, asking you the similar question, but what is your role as the president of the board, and then anything that you would like to add to that, or did Sara just take all the thunder with what the organization does?
No, we are a smaller board, and we are a very hands-on working board.
Okay.
And so we support not only the planning and the vision, what can we offer, how can we offer it, where's our outreach, where are our fundraising efforts, but also the boots on the ground. How are we planning some of the details to make sure that the supports and plans we have in place can be brought to fruition and actually meet the outcomes that we're intending to meet. So my particular role really is just working with the rest of the board and with Sara to make sure day-to-day stays on track. As you're well aware, we're coming out of a unique time in our community.
Thank you for putting a positive spin on it. Unique is a good word.
Well,
unique
and I think
opportunity.
that's really one of our greatest celebrations is that we have survived. I find is in my role as an educator, we're used to connecting families with community agencies. And what happens is when students leave high school, where do families get this information? And so oftentimes they do reach out to Sara, and that's a sector of the community that needs that type of support, because you can call 1-800 numbers and you'll get information, but it doesn't always answer your questions, or you don't get the training that you need. And so our role for our board is really to kind of tailor those niches. What does our population need right now? What do our families need for support?
Okay, very good. Thank you. So, Tracy, from your perspective, being a board member and your own life experience and involvement with ARC, how would you add anything to that, or how would you describe kind of your involvement and anything you'd like to share?
I think in addition to being a parent, I also bring sort of a legal perspective sometimes, whether that may be always good news or welcome, I'm not sure, but I have spent some time researching education law, and I share that in our meetings, and sometimes in the board meetings, and sometimes one-on-one with Sara about things I think may be thorny or problematic, or that we really need to deal with. And it's often finding problems to avoid and to deal with.
Sure.
And I have been sought out by other people in the community looking for guardianship questions, which I can't answer, but they know that I'm associated with the ARC, and the ARC provides such broad services.
Okay.
I think no matter what your concern is in the community, the ARC is somehow involved, whether it's someone having a traumatic accident and needing a ramp, or a child with autism who is engaging in because of sensory issues and they're afraid in the car, and getting them an appropriate car seat for a much older child, or transition services for, and these are all things Sara does. When I say we, I mean Sara. Yes, but
things that you might not be thinking of, right?
But very real world issues when we have across the country. You may read about adolescents or young adults with autism or Down syndrome who are severely injured or killed because of false restraint or inappropriate use of force. And the ARC, Sara, has done a lot of training with the police department for appropriate interventions in our school systems, with our resource officers, and with our police departments to avoid that kind of tragic situation. And that was not my brainchild. This was Sara. But those kind of issues, too, the things that people may not even consider or think about, are things that the ARC does. And it's incredibly broad, the services that are provided. So I'm often the kind of person who says, yeah, but liability.
Sure.
Yeah, but we have, and Sarah's like, but then we.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
it's kind of
I
like
mean,
in insurance in the business world is something you really don't want to talk about, but it's necessary. And so it's
Exactly.
similar, the things let's go serve people I'm often doing that and doing things here without thinking about what are the consequences I'm just not going to think about that could occur. So
Right.
having that guidance is
Yes.
important.
And also some thorny issues with the school system. And say, hey, the federal government, this is a mandate. And
Right.
this is what's happening and I've tried to pull in a special education law firm before when things have happened in the community. And looking at special education law to make sure that our students and our parents in the community are getting their needs met. Despite a lack of resources,
Right.
those services are still required.
Sure.
So I'm often the prickly one.
Well, and you that's your description, and I understand where you're coming from, but it's just it becomes very well rounded in our discussions because things like you said, sometimes we just want to go and do
absolutely.
because the intention is good and we're meeting the needs, but getting input from Jennifer and Tracy and the rest of our board members, that's the beauty of a working board because you are, you're alive, you're doing it, and you are taking things into consideration that are making what you're doing better and more effective.
Okay.
I would just add to that, I think the ARC is unique in that we have our own initiatives. We have our programs, our events, our celebrations, our training, but just as much as we have that we run on our own, we are collaborators with other community agencies and businesses and memberships. I mean, just half the time you hear Sara speaking, she's doing it in collaboration with another agency or group.
Gotcha.
And that might be training with police, that might be fetal alcohol syndrome training to high school health classes, wherever that is.
All right, so you've mentioned a couple of initiatives specific. Is there one maybe you can elaborate on or something you get a little more detail or in kind of the next question that we kind of like to talk about, is there something related to some initiative, an anecdotal story of a success? I'm sure you've seen plenty, right? All three of you probably over the years, but is there an anecdotal story related to some of the initiatives that you can kind of describe a success story or something that made a big impact on you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. One of the things, we're proud of everything we do.
Sure.
One of the biggest things that we just beam about is the summer enrichment camp that we put together. I came on in 2005, 2006. Our board at the time, we just said, hey, what is there for our individuals during summer camp, during summertime? And there was only one. And we said, okay, we need to do something about that. So we created Camp Kaleidoscope. It is for ages 7 and up. The up is usually 22, so it's roughly school age individuals with developmental disabilities. So other than COVID year, we've been going every year. It looks a little different. We've built on it, have amazing staff, and we maintain a 4-to-1 ratio, which a lot of places can't say that they do, but that is a need for us. One of the things that we have actually learned probably over the last 5 years is, and in addition to being a United Way partner agency, kind of led us to this growth, measuring. How can you measure growth? How can you, and if you're not in that mindset, it's like, but it's a camp for kids with special needs. What else do you need to know? It's awesome.
But how do you make that impact tangible?
Yes, and
Right.
that was kind of our struggle, if you will. So what we've been able to really start teasing out, and it was a great board effort too, is what are we doing now and how can we present it in a more tangible way? So how many folks are we serving? We serve up to 22 campers every summer. But what we came to realize was the fact of we started asking questions in a different way. If you didn't have camp, how much socialization would your individual get, would your kid get during the summer? How much outside play? How many field trips? How many this? What wouldn't they have if they didn't have camp? And then the other thing that has been really eye-opening is the financial aspect. So we have grants through United Way and other opportunities to help with the funding. Everything else with the ARC is free. And if we could get enough grant funding for Camp Kaleidoscope, we would, but we've got to get the right kind of staff to work there as well. So we fund as much as we can, and then there's a small fee for the families to cover. But we started looking at financial stability, and we started looking at that impact on the families. What would you do? What would happen? What would it look like if you did not have camp? If you didn't have a safe, secure place, you can't measure peace of mind, right? But if you didn't have camp during the summer months and you had to take a leave of absence, what financial impact would that have on your family, on your household? And the average, and folks are, we give how many months would it have saved, how much money, and we give them kind of ranges. But on average, for the last 5 or 6 years, our camp has been able to help sustain 21 months of employment with a value of over $29,000. So even if people in the community don't understand our population, they don't understand what they need and the supports that they and their families require, they can understand what it might be like to not have a job and not have that income. So, it's been really neat to be able to expand on some of these measurements, so to speak, that people can relate to, because as a parent, as an educator, and all of us involved, we know how awesome camp is. We get to see them every week, but having some of those tangible things has made it a lot easier to explain.
Sure.
So we're working on life skills. We're working on socialization, health and wellness, and allowing them to be their own advocates when we go on field trips to the Shield Museum and things like that. It's not, oh, here comes those kids. It's, oh, wow, look at all you guys. And it's recognizing them as people first. And that's kind of our driving force. So camp has just been awesome.
Well, that's
I love
good.
camp.
So I appreciate you sharing that. So Jennifer or Tracy, any initiatives or anything that you can recall specifically, either one of you would like to share about something that you've seen personally that was like, wow, I mean, this is what makes it worthwhile?
Well, we also have Operation Santa. And Operation Santa is different around the holidays because we collect donors sometimes just want to donate, some will adopt, but it is just for adults. It is not for children. And so most of the drives you see are Toys for Tots and really around that younger crowd. But for many of our adults, some of them much older, they may live in a group home. They may not have family that get to visit them. They just may not have family. I mean, their little tiny community can't provide. So when we send out wish list, one reflection we have every year is most of what they ask for are needs. Yeah. Not even wants. They want toiletries or a watch or a ball cap or, things are just undergarment, things that they need. Really take precedent. Even, their want list is sometimes just not there, because they don't get to that point. Like what they really want are some of those basic needs. So I think Operation Santa, in the last few years, we have changed kind of how we reach out to the community, and Sara has gone around and explained about Operation Santa and the niche that it really provides. And we have been able to provide more than we ever have, completely covered by donors, which we had not been able to do out of the past. And it has been phenomenal to reach those folks that you typically won't see out in the community, right, and you don't know about them. But to provide both wants and needs. So there's always, part of their gifts are always around those toiletries and basic needs, and then some of the things that they want, coloring books, whatever that is. Because for them, it's still a very special time. Sure. And nobody wants to feel isolated at the holidays. And so it's very different than what you see out in the community, where a lot of the effort is towards the younger population.
I think one thing that we saw a couple Christmases ago, and we started asking for wants and needs, because just a wish list, if you've gotten them from your kids or nieces or nephews, they want everything, right? Right. So we wanted to make sure we had a little bit more of a concentrated effort on what what do you want and what do you need? And what I can tell you is, to echo what Jennifer said, you know, it's toiletries, it's winter apparel, it's watches and jewelry, but at the same time, they also know what they want, because there was a young lady who on her want section put a 52-inch LCD TV. Who doesn't want that, you know? But knowing the difference of asking for it and not asking for it on a Christmas list, but she still knew what she wanted, right? Yeah. So it's the reality of it is there. And a lot of these folks, they are, you know, they are financially limited. Most people in group homes have, after all their stuff is covered, they have $66 left for underwear, for a cheeseburger, for whatever. And so, you know, concentrating on adults, because they're inadvertently the forgotten population. You don't think about a 21-year-old still being 100% dependent on caregivers, right. You know? So so we focus on the adult population, and the Operation Santa is the only one of its kind in Gaston County. So
very good.
Pretty proud of that.
Tracy, was anything you would add to that question about any?
I would, and the word I had written down, two of the words were isolation and inclusion. And this is for the children and the parents. It's a very scary transition when you find yourself being the care provider for a child with significant special needs. It's very lonely. It's very scary. So some of the things that the ARC provides are things that, I mean, because I have a typical son, well, as typical as he can be. He's at Georgia Tech, you know, He did the thing. He went on, he's going to move out, he's going to have a job, he's going to be his own person. That's what we take for granted. We take for granted that there are things he could do and stay after school that he chose to do, and he'd be fine, and he'd be looked after. He can advocate for himself. If he didn't like something, he could tell us in many, 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 many words. But when you have a child with special needs, my daughter happens to be nonverbal, although there were some places that stand out in my mind where she was invited to come for summer activities, like Stowe Botanical Gardens would always say, please send her, but I knew I would have to go. I would have to go to help navigate that, and as generous and as kind as they would be, I knew that that there was going to be a lot of work to make it work. So to have a camp where I can take my child, and I know she's going to be taken care of. Most of the staff is our special education experts anyway, educators and or parents, siblings. This is a professional crew. That means my child is not sitting at home with me, regardless of whatever financial resources they are. I can't buy 10 other kids or 20 other kids for her to hang out with during the summer.
Right.
There's no way I can provide that kind of enrichment. But more importantly, she is not alone all summer. And she is not alone as she gets older. She has opportunities to go to a dance, to go to activities, whether it be through the ARC or Special Olympics. She can have the kind of life that we take for granted. And I, as a parent, and other parents, we can go to a workshop.
It's all right. That's how we roll here. Gaston's great. All good.
So we can go to a workshop to discuss, I'm really scared about or worried or confused about sending my child to kindergarten. I was terrified. I was really, really scared. She has a lot of needs. So then transitioning between elementary and middle school and high school, and what happens after, and what do you do about guardianship? These are all programs that Sara hasn't even mentioned, and resources, because it's just something that you do all the time. Probably don't even think about it, but this is a lifeline for parents who are also isolated. And it is incredibly important because there is nobody else who does this. Nobody. And it can be, if you think about just with your typical kid, how much energy, you worry about them, right?
Sure,
you worry about them being safe and taken care of, and just magnify that, and then not have anyone to ask. and not have any resources, and not know if your kid who can't tell you if things happen is going to be okay. So I can't emphasize enough the importance of providing resources to bridge that gap of isolation, not only for our children and young adults and our older adults with special needs, but also for their care providers and their families. It is an invaluable resource, and nobody else is doing it in Gaston County. There is a special needs law firm in Charlotte, Cuddy Law Firm, but that's in Charlotte.
Right.
And it's a great resource that I've utilized myself. But in Gaston County, we have 250,000 residents. And this woman right here is the lifeline for so many of them.
She's the spoke of the wheel, so to speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the hub of the wheel, not the spoke of the wheel, the hub of the wheel. So, listen, those were three. I appreciate you sharing that because those were great examples of the work you're doing and things that, to your point, Tracy, that, the typical parent just not aware of. And it's a different world, right, when you're not experiencing that yourself. So, looking ahead for the organization, that classic question is 5 to 10 years down the road, but I don't necessarily like that question specifically. But, Sara, what do you see, the future looking like for the organization here locally?
The first thing that comes to mind, again, is centered, or, we're always going to be advocates. We're always going to have awareness. We're always, want to be that first point of contact. Our continued need is to build on Camp Kaleidoscope.
Okay.
We are fortunate enough, as Jennifer said, as collaborators, it's what do we need, and not duplicate efforts, but to build on that existing effort and build the manpower. If we're all working for the same population, we partner with a local church. So what's great about that is we're not having to spend money on rent in what we would for a building, since I have a 12 by 12 office and that's it. Is money we would spend on rent, we can pour into staff payroll, and more staff means serving more campers. So, I don't want to say we're stuck. We're comfortable between 20 and 22 campers based on our location, on our availability. But if we want to go with 5 years down the road, I would absolutely love to be more of a full-time, or closer to a full-time. We're Monday through Thursday, 9 to 3, so it mimics a typical school day.
Okay.
Again, Tracy mentioned that our staff has been either service providers in this industry or special education teachers. And, we do 6 weeks in the summer, Monday through Thursday, but we're only taking care of some of those and serving some of them. It's not a good fit because of the time frame for a lot of other folks. So expansion for camp to be more functional for more families is where I would like to see it.
Understood. As a board in general, Jennifer and Tracy, is there anything that the board has talked about or anything plans down the road, or is it top secret?
Well, there's no top secret about it, but we know that things have changed in the past few years, and
Sure.
so we have our current planning is how can we get back to where we were.
Gotcha.
And still reach those families. That social aspect in isolation was really huge for a couple of years. Many of our clients have medical issues that prevented them from being out in the community, even as it began to open back up again. And so now thinking how we can reach out. Sara has recently become a trainer for fetal alcohol syndrome, and so as these opportunities come. For her to go out and do more outreach and training in the community. You hear the buzzword is inclusion, but what inclusion is not always is acceptance. And so you may also in our community hear a lot about services, and although many of our families and clients can access services, those agencies don't always have the service providers. And In my field, when I get to interview candidates for positions, they have a personal connection with somebody that has driven and called them to serve, whether it be providing therapies, speech services, to become an education, to work in the camp. There's always these personal connections, someone they met in the community in church, somebody that was in their class at school. And so not only do we need to get back to where we can fully include, but know that that's going to impact access and acceptance for our clients as well.
Okay, very good. Tracy, would you add anything to that about the future of the organization, or did they cover it pretty well?
It's more of a personal aspiration of mine, so surprise. We have been extremely fortunate with my daughter's educational settings. It's just extraordinary administration. It goes from the top down to the educators, the faculty, staff, the custodians. I think my daughter has probably danced with and twirled everyone at all of her schools. But that is not always the experience for everyone at every school. And I think it would be really nice to think about ways to help expand that kind of advocacy and accountability throughout the county. And I don't know what that would look like, so that's why it's not necessarily an ARC's goal. And I've individually assisted some people, just providing them with some background and suggestions for handling some things, and tried to address some things myself in the county. But I see that as a goal and some kind of partnership, but it's such a large expansion, and it's taking on so much that right now we're just trying to take care of the needs that exist, which are vast.
Understood.
But I would love to see more families in the kind of environment my daughter has been so blessed to enjoy.
Okay, well, good. Well, again, that's some good stuff. So before we move on, are there any questions I haven't asked, or anything you'd like to share? I mean, of course, before we're finished, we'll make sure that our listeners know how to find more information about the organization, get involved, or just make sure that's the main thing that we get out. But any other questions I should have asked or haven't, or anything else you'd like to share before we move on to these really important?
The only thing I had thought about was when we talked about services. So we service the community, but we are not a service provider in the sense that we do not have billable services. We do not receive state or federal funding. Everything we do, we seek out the funding for. So it's fundraisers, it's writing grants, it's donations, and I think that's really important, because you don't know, just because you write a $10,000 grant doesn't mean you're going to get $10,000. You might get 3. And then with that 3, you got to figure out how to make it work with what you need. But so a lot of services are based on that type of funding. So no insurance, no Medicaid, no Medicare. Pretty much your criteria, you have a developmental disability and you're a Gaston County resident. How can we help you? So I think, especially in this economic world, the funding is a big piece, because if there are services that if you don't have government supplemental, if you don't have Medicaid, you're on you don't qualify, and that's not how we operate. So that's a big piece for us.
That's a good point.
Good to hear. So remember, this is a podcast about Gaston County, right? And good things happening around Gaston County. However, we have a set of questions, and we're going to call this Franklin Boulevard, where your office is, your speed round of questions. Okay. And so this is really what your family, other board members, staff, this is what they really want to know about the 3 of you. All right. So I'm going to start way down there again with Jennifer. So I'm assuming you've all been here long enough to have visited Tony's Ice Cream.
Oh, of course.
Okay. So Jennifer, what's your favorite Tony's Ice Cream flavor?
Oh, cookies and cream.
Cookies and cream.
Okay. Peanut butter ripple.
Peanut butter ripple. I'm not sure we've had that one as an answer.
I'm all about some peanut butter.
Tracy?
The
banana split
pudding,
or
the banana pudding.
Oh,
Do they
yeah, we
still
have
have
had
that?
that as an
Yes.
answer. Yes.
That's yummy.
Matter of fact, that might have been Amy's answer here, our marketing director. All right, Tracy, we'll stay with you. Are you a Sundrop or Cheerwine person?
Cheerwine.
Cheerwine. Me as well. Cheerwine.
Cheerwine.
All right, we've got the 100% going on there. Jennifer, favorite local restaurant?
Webb Street Kitchen.
Yeah, that's a common answer.
A newer one, Mangiamo's.
Yeah, down
Yeah.
Tony
right
loved that
on Main
too.
Street. Yeah.
Yes.
Tracy?
It'd be a toss-up between Beppa and Viet May. We're always getting
Okay.
and
All
at
right.
least once a week.
How about Tracy? Favorite outdoor activity or favorite park or something here in Gaston County?
Martha Rivers. It's
Yeah,
a
Martha
great
Rivers
place
is
to
great.
walk and people watch, and it's wonderful.
Sarah?
I actually have Martha Rivers too. All three kids very active, and so that was our home away from home and continues to be. But getting out there, especially watching my kids play ball.
Yeah, I had 3 kids, so a lot of soccer and some early on baseball and
Yes.
t-ball. Well, coach pitch out there.
Yeah.
I hit a lot of little kids when I was pitching coach pitch out there. Jennifer, how about you?
We love Rankin Lake, but we live up in the Cherville, so we hit all those parks up there and
Yeah,
spend
very good.
quite a bit of time on the soccer fields and ball fields.
All right, here's the most important question of the day. I'm gonna stick with you, Jennifer, and I don't really. There's only one correct
Let me
answer,
take cover.
but UNC, Duke, or NC State?
UNC. Clearly not the right answer.
Give me something. Here. You just got a want. You don't have headphones on. Sarah.
Of those three, if I have to pick one, it would be NC State.
That's what I thought. Well, you just got some applause. What would what would be the other one?
Well, my husband and I went to Campbell University.
Oh, okay.
We were Division I athletes there, and so that's kind of our, that's our pull.
The Camels, right?
Yes, I certainly, even though I was recruited to play fast pitch softball there, and he wrestled, and we loved it. We certainly did not go there for the mascot, but Gaylord and Gladys are pretty awesome.
Absolutely. Tracy?
If I had to pick one of these, it would be UNC.
That's what I was afraid of. So if it was something else, it would be
Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech. That's right.
My son's in the marching band.
Yeah, I knew that actually.
That is the only acceptable answer in our home now.
That's well, you know what? My Wolfpack is playing the Yellow Jackets tonight in basketball, I think.
That's right.
So we'll have to see.
Well, William may be in the crowd. He's doing pep band this year. I don't know if
Oh,
he's doing
okay.
the game.
Well,
so
I will if I get a chance to watch. I'll be on the
look
lookout.
for the tall, thin kid with the sousaphone.
So Tracy, what is something very few people know about you?
I played on the defensive line in flag football in college, and that was good.
Really? And where was that?
That was at Oglethorpe in Atlanta.
Ah, okay. That sounds scary, actually.
Yeah.
Defensive line. Tracy, the defensive line person.
If I moved too slowly, I would get crushed by the big girls. I weighed 90 pounds.
That's funny.
I was like, oh, I always felt sorry for me because I weighed 90 pounds.
that's
And all the other
definitely-
girls were like,
That's
you know,
definitely a first
athletes.
as an answer
There you go.
on the podcast here. Sarah, what about you?
I mentioned playing the Division I fast pitch softball.
Yeah.
Of all the sports I played, that's what I stayed with. And a lot of folks don't know that I was invited to try out for the 1996 Olympic team.
Oh, wow.
And made it through 2 cuts.
Holy moly.
Yeah, it was pretty
That's
cool.
legit.
And it is legit, right?
Yes.
And another neat thing is with those Olympic Games being in Atlanta, my daddy's family is from south of there. And so the softball, Olympic softball was played in my grandmother's hometown of Columbus. So not only did I get to try out and see a lot of these people, we got to go to some games.
Oh,
so
man.
it was kind of came full circle. Even though I didn't make it, it was pretty cool.
Oh, well, good for you, man.
Yeah.
That's a great story. Sorry, you were last, Jennifer.
That's
so you
all
got to top.
right.
You got to top those two.
Yeah, nothing too snazzy like that. But definitely going back to my athlete days, I am not currently fit to rock climb anymore, but that was a great passion
Really?
of mine before I had a family and children and, could do things that I like to do. And I loved rock climbing, indoor, outdoor.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's not something
I was
I've done
never
a lot of.
fabulous at it, but I loved it.
Oh, that's great. All right, so Jennifer, sticking with you, is there a recent book that you've read or article or something you follow that you could share with our listeners that might be?
Oh. No, not that. I mean, I've read quite a few that I just don't remember their names anymore. To be able to recommend one.
Well, that's a totally unacceptable answer. However, we'll move on to Sara.
The most recent book I've read that I enjoyed was Where the Crawdads Sing.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
So
yes.
I like that. When I have time to read for pleasure, it's those kind of books.
Okay, very good. Tracy, what about you?
I think my favorite book last year was Project Hail Mary. I did the audiobook, which was great.
I've heard that was fantastic.
Yeah, and it's the same author as the author of The Martian. So, but since this is talking about intellectual disabilities, I also recommend Driven to Distraction by Edward Hollowell.
Okay.
For adults who know they have or may not know they have ADD or ADHD. It's a really important read.
Okay. Yeah, appreciate that. I mean, I'm a big reader, whether it's business, personal development, occasionally something that's just for pleasure, and so I just like hearing what our guests have read and something they could share. So I appreciate you indulging us on those Gaston County and personal related questions. So, maybe sticking with you, Tracy, for this next question. Besides the Arc of Gaston County, why would you say that Gaston County is such a great place?
Part of what we came from Madison, Wisconsin, which is
Okay.
really different from here.
Right.
It's Madison is surrounded by reality. It's a very interesting and different place. But my husband met one of the partners at his group at Disney World on one of the trams.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Grover White, and he was just so warm and so kind. And he said, we need to go look there. And it's been my experience that, you can hear a lot about, whether or not people are really truly warm and kind in the South. But my experience has been that to the depth of their bones, there are some really just warm, kind people in this community, and particularly with my experience with Ella, it is just a lot of the attributes of a small town are here.
Mm-hmm.
And the parts where we're kind and we help each other, we're just nice to each other. And I think that's quite lovely.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you sharing that. Sara, how would you follow that one?
Well, I definitely agree, so ditto. But one of the things that's been neat, being in the banking world for 10 years before I came here, a transplant from Roanoke, Virginia, when I started with the ARC, I was able to experience Gaston County. So when I worked in Charlotte for the bank, I just lived here. I knew how to get.
Okay, good point.
I knew how to get to doctor's offices. I knew how to get to the grocery store and to the bank. But I worked in North Charlotte. So since being at the ARC and office being in the United Way building, I've been able to experience my county and kind of what Tracy's talking about. And so if you've lived here a while, you know that it's Cherryville and not Cherryville.
Yes.
That, the beams are from Cherryville, and then you've got white sides towards, and so those kind of things, really learning about my community, it has just been really neat. But I've really liked the expansion of our palettes with cuisine and how
it's interesting, isn't it?
many varieties of restaurants are popping up. I'll give it a try, and if I don't like it, that means I don't like you. I just don't like your food. But the variety has been really exciting to see.
You don't have to go. There's lots of choices now where you don't have to go across the river if you don't want to.
Exactly.
And have a good meal, frankly, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It was sparse when we moved here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jennifer?
I'm originally from Virginia, and I was a city mouse. And so when I transplanted to North Carolina, I landed in Charlotte for 8 years. And it's definitely a big city there, and it has a lot to offer, but Gaston County is great. I love that we have, just like you guys described, that down-home feel. But I live in Cherryville. It's just a very tight-knit community. There is so much support there. I'm always impressed at the variety of fun and activities. Like when I was a young adult, before I had a family, like there was so much for me to do right here without having to cross the river. And then as we have raised a family, I have 2 teenagers now. It is amazing what the community has to offer, that we don't have to go very far. We don't have to do travel ball if we don't want to, because there is so much right here. And I have loved that, because I feel like I get my cake and eat it too.
Yeah, and don't forget, Charlotte is the gateway to Gastonia, if you weren't
right.
aware of that. right, Naomi? So, okay, this is, I think Naomi rolls her eyes probably because I say this every episode, that this last question is my favorite question probably. I say that about multiple questions, but, So, Jennifer, I'll let you go first on this one. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Oh, I love this question. I feel like my 20s were about self-acceptance and just figuring out, and I would just tell myself at 20 years old, get over it, you know who you are, move on with life, and then just enjoy your time. Lean into it.
Yeah, that's good. Sarah, how would you answer that one?
Along the same lines, but, let it happen. And always follow your heart. You go through certain experiences for a reason, and that helps to guide you for the next step. So let it happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. Tracy, how would you answer that?
Fight for what you believe in, which is part of what I did, but also don't take yourself so seriously.
Yeah, the things, I know that this comes up over the 77 previous episodes, but also, the things that seem like a big deal when you were 20 sometimes really weren't,
Right.
and you took them. So I know I took things seriously, and it was the end of the world, right? And you look back now and just laugh, especially now that I have a 23, a 21, and tomorrow will be a 17-year-old. So the perspective is different. So, well, ladies, I can't thank you enough for your time. This has been really good. So, again, the main point is to bring awareness to the organization. So where can listeners go online, or how can they get in touch with you guys or find out more information about the organization?
We've got a variety of ways. So our website is www.gastoncountyarc.org. Telephone number is 704-861-1036. We are on Facebook under the Arc of Gaston County, and email is arcgaston@gmail.com. So we mentioned that, with the changes that we've had the last couple of years, and everybody's had some funding challenges, and we were not exempt to that. So in order to continue to serve and we have reduced to part-time.
Okay.
But all of those ways will still reach us for whatever you need.
Very good. I appreciate you sharing that. So any last words of wisdom, or any of the three of you, or anything you'd like to share before we close this episode out?
No, just thank you for the opportunity to
well, you're welcome.
share
It's
about
been good.
the Arc. And
I would offer that if people listening or watching want to be involved, there are lots of ways for people to be involved, whether it's just sending a check, because
Sure.
it's not free.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the clients that we serve have extreme financial need.
Okay.
There's also opportunities for your youth group, for your kids group, for your adult groups, for volunteer opportunities, fundraising opportunities, whether it be collecting toiletries or adopting someone for Operation Santa, or helping with general funding, or some, hands-on volunteer opportunities. I cannot think of anything you would be interested in that the ARC does not do. Sponsoring a dance, helping with health needs. There's just about anything that would touch your heart that's available, and it's needed. And this is a population that often gets forgotten. So if you feel so moved, hop online, put in the call, and get motivated.
Well, again,
Bring your friends.
I appreciate that, because that is the point. I mean, we're not we do hope that we have listeners out here who are hearing about it for the first time, and they are moved to help some of these organizations that we've had on the podcast here. And I personally just want to. I do know the work you're doing. I've been fortunate to be involved with United Way for a very long time, and unfortunately for Sara, when I was the campaign chair a few years ago, she got stuck with me going to a couple locations. But the point there is I got to hear firsthand the story,
Right.
as you were sharing with groups who were
Yes.
running campaigns, you know.
Right.
And so this organization has been on my radar for a long time because of my association with the United Way. And I just finished, a 7-year stint
That's
on the board.
right.
So I'm taking a little break. But we have another team member here who just joined the board as well.
Right.
So GSM will still have a presence there at the United Way. So, but I do appreciate the work you do, like so many organizations and people we've spoken to on the podcast here. You guys are doing great work here in the county and making a real positive impact on our county. So we are very grateful for that. And like I normally do, I'm going to finish this episode with a thought for the week. And I did pick one that I think ties into the work that the ARC does here locally. And maybe a little selfish. I pulled something from John Wesley. I'm a Methodist. I'm a member of First United Methodist here in Gastonia, and John Wesley is considered the founder of Methodism. And he said, "Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can." So I think that's a good description of what these ladies are doing and the organization is doing here in Gaston County. So again, I appreciate their work and the time. And to our listeners out there, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Please continue to spread the word if you can about the podcast. And please don't hesitate to contact us here at our email, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, Naomi, gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on all our social media platforms. And as I say every week, give us a good 5-star rating because that helps us get noticed. Thanks again to Sara, Tracy, and Jennifer for being our guests today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Naomi Hunt and Amy Anderson from GSM Services and edited here locally by the Sumner Group. I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.